Hello and welcome to an overview of the iMarkbook. Now this is a tool based in Excel which is designed to replace the marks and registers at the back of your planner. As you can see, we've got different buttons here that will take us to different pages within the tool, and this particular example is set up for GCSE, so to take a particular cohort from year 9 all the way through to year 11. So when you open the tool for the first time, the first thing you need to do is configure it and set it up ready for your particular cohort. So the first thing to click on is actually down the bottom where it says Grade Boundaries and Setup. So here we have lots of yellow cells that we can manipulate and adjust. So because this is going to be for an example of GCSE, I'm going to put the start date as sometime in the past, so we'll just go with the 1st of September 2019. Now it's GCSE from year 9 onwards, so that's going to be year 9, 10, 11, so it's 3 years on the course. We're going to have a fine level descriptor. Now we know that GCSE levels are 1 to 9, but we need a little bit more tolerance than that. So for this example I'm going to go decimal points, so 0.1, and obviously therefore we're going to have 10 of those. You could, for example, put in something else like a plus, and you could have 3 of them, so you would end up with level 1, 1 plus, 1 plus plus, and then 1 plus plus plus. But for the sake of this course we're going to go with the decimal point, and therefore we want 10 of them. And I expect my students to start in year 9 and make 2 levels of progress by the end of year 11. So here we have the grade boundary tolerance, and what this means is it's going to come up with their grades and their results, and it's going to color code them. So red means they are under where they should be by that point or by the end of the course, but we can have a tolerance, so that's less. So to be under, if they are minus 1.3 of a level where they should be, it will show up as red, but if they're only minus 1.2 of a level away, they'll be amber because that's where they're approaching. So here you can see what constitutes them being under their target, approaching their target, on target, and then over target. Here we have a box where we can choose the cohort. Again, we're going to do GCSE, but you can see this file can be set up for any kind of course you want. And then the last thing here is to put in the grade boundaries. So these orange ones are locked, we can't adjust those. So we can start with level 1, and then we'll move on to level 2, and so on. And obviously if you have a course that only has A through E, or a BTEC course which has level 1 pass and level 2 pass and things, you don't have to use all of these slots, but you've got up to 9 should you want to use them. And then we need to put in the grade boundaries. Now for this I'm just going to kind of make it up, so 10.2, and this could be the grade boundaries from the last year, or this could be an average of grade boundaries, or however you see fit to make it up, whatever kind of reflects your course the best. So something like this. We'll make it really hard to get the top marks. It says 95.5% to get a level 9. So there you go, a bit tight. So then once you've set this up, you can of course come back to this and then make adjustments, but generally speaking you'll set all of this up at the beginning of a class, at the beginning of a cohort, and then this will stay with that group for the entirety of the course. So once you've done all that, you just click back. The next thing to do to set this file up so we can use it is to click on the button that says Class Lists and Details. That's taken us to this page here where we can fill in all of the details for our cohort. Now this is designed to take an entire cohort from a subject within one year group. So this would be when, say, an entire group of year 9s take up a subject like media studies as their option. So I'm going to put up here as the class name Media GCSE Set 2019. And then next to it here we have the current date. So we can now start adding in our students. I'm going to put in student 1, student 2, and so on. We'll put in a few student names there. And then we can pick their class. So this is going to be student in class A. We're going to have a class B and a couple of class C's, which we'll change there. There we go. And gender we can put in however we see fit, male, female, and so on. And then here we've got a space to put their significant group, and this unfortunate soul is going to be all of them. SEND, looked after child, English as additional language, pupil premium, more able and talented, and they're going to have a medical condition as well. And you'll see that these things have flagged up here for a quick reference. Also, we're going to identify this student as being an EpiPen user. As you can see at the top here, it tells us that we have one EpiPen user. And we then can go over here to the right hand side and put in their target grade. Now, because we already entered in the grade boundaries earlier, it's giving us a drop down list to work from. So this student number 1, their target grade for the end of this GCSE is going to be a level 6. And then you can see their target band therefore is 6 to 8. And the reason we have 2 here is because around February time they tend to recalculate the target grade, so that may change. So it might mean that actually by the time they redo this in February he might be a 6.2, and again that hasn't changed because it's still 6 to 8. But you'll see if we said he's a 7.1, it would change to a 7 to a 9 as their target band. The idea of giving them a target band, of course, is that they don't stop once they hit their target, they aspire to do even more. And this column here will show us their current working at grade as an average when we start putting in their details and their results from assessments. So I'm just going to fast forward and put in a load of data here so you can see how it would look with a full class. Here we have the class list now set up for the entire cohort, and as you can see we have the coloured blocks here to quickly indicate what kind of students we have in terms of significant groups. But in this particular cohort we have 50 students spread over 2 classes, 38 males, 12 females, a range of different significant groups. Their current year is year 9 because it's the first year of the course, and here we have their target bands and target grades. Again, you can see here that it picks out EpiPens as a particular point of interest, as that's something that you may need to act on immediately within your class. So we also have a couple of options over here. Notes, for example, we could say attendance letter sent home, things like that that might help us just gauge what this class is going on, especially as the years progress. And then here we have drop. So let's say student 4 here has decided to move school at some point. We can come back in here, click dropped, and it will just grey them out, and it will take them out the rest of the file as well without you having to go through and delete anything. If a student joins later on, after say in year 10, you just scroll down to the bottom and you just add them in as a new student, type the name, fill in the class list and all the rest of it, and that'll all come up for you there. So this again is something that you kind of set up at the beginning, and then you might need to drop back into every now and then just to remove or add students and upgrade their end of course targets. When it becomes year 10, so the following year, or year 11 the year after, over on this side another set of these columns here will appear for each of those years, so you can continue to add those grades. There's a quick print button here as well. Set your printer up first by going File, Print, choose your printer. Come back to this page, push print, and it will print a nice copy of this out ready for your folders and files should you need it. So once you've done all of that, you just need to click the back button. If we go ahead and click on where it says Year 9 assessments, we'll then be able to put in the results from any assessments that this year group have done. That has taken us to this page where we can enter in our results for assessments for year 9. Now on the left here we've got their name, class and current end of course target, which has been pulled from the previous pages that we just looked at. And the current end of course target obviously will bring back the most up-to-date target for them. We then have a space here for the average achievement this year and tracking, which is empty at the moment because we haven't actually put in any assessments just yet. What we can do is we can click on Add New Assessment, and that will bring up a space here to put in our results from our first assessment. Now if we put in the assessment title, we'll just call it Test for now, and the date of that assessment, let's say it was in the past, the 1st of the 9th 2020, And let's say that that was marked out of 50. This part here, it says manual percentage adjustment. I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes time. So let's say student 1 got 25 marks out of the 50, and we can see there that the result for that would be a level 4.9, and that's based on the grade boundaries that we entered in earlier. And the tracking has come up as purple. Now the tracking is based on where they should be by the end of the course. So this student 1, their course target is a 5.9 by the end of year 11. So currently, if this was the beginning of year 9 and they're on a 4.9, that shows that they are on track to better their end of course target. So let's try out student 2, who has a similar grade, a similar target grade, and say they only got 10 marks. Again, you can see that that result would be a 1.6, and they would be tracking red. So again, if student 2 continues as they are, in pretty much 3 years' time, they are not going to be able to achieve their 5.3. Now, we have a manual percentage adjustment here. So let's say that this task was a practical task, and that it's only really worth about 30% of the overall course. Or you feel that it was a question that was taken out of context. So if they were to complete this question in an exam, it might actually be harder for them to complete. So we can put a manual adjustment. So let's drop the grade by 70%. And again, you can see there that the result has changed and their tracking has changed. 70% might be a little bit harsh, so we could say 50%, and that would again change the result. So if we now click on the hide all assessments button, we can back out of that. Now let's say in the future you want to add more grades and more marks to that same assessment. You would then just click show all assessments, and you have access to all of the assessments that you may have completed, and you can add in more grades and more results as you see fit. So again, I'm just going to click on hide all assessments. Let's say they've done another assessment now. I'm going to click add new assessment. You can see it takes us to the second assessment slot. Again, we'll just say that this was another test, and let's put this as today's date, which would be the 2nd of the 12th 2020, and again marks out of 50, and we'll leave the percentage adjustment. Now if this student was to get half marks, 25, we'll see that again that's a 4.9, and now you'll notice that over here the average achievement and the average tracking has now changed. This student here, for example, got 50, that gives them a 9 and says their average achievement is a 5. So we can see kind of where they are at the moment. Again, of course, we can make a manual adjustment to that, and also we can make a manual adjustment to the overall tracking. Let's say for some reason everybody was doing remarkably well, and you feel that actually that is because of certain criteria, such as you've given them more time on questions they would have, or you're spending more time on practical work. You can do a further adjustment in this box to affect the overall grades. Another cool feature on this is that if you go to show all assessments, and we have our information put in here for assessment 1 and for assessment 2, you can see that this first assessment completed on the 1st of the 9th 2020, and it was out of 50. This student got 24 marks, which gave them a 4.7, and that's tracking purple. Fast forward towards the end of the year, when we've got through some of the content, same marks, same result, same grade, but the tracking is now showing green, and that is because there is now less time to make progress. So a student who got a level 4.7 at the beginning of the year, where their target grade is 5.9, that does show them as tracking purple, as if they're going to be over target. Whereas when you look at it in the future, when there's less time to complete the course, they've obviously got less levels of progress they can make and less time to improve their grade, so the same result might actually come back with a lower tracking score. And in fact, that is also reflected in the overall tracking. So the overall tracking here is compared to the date we are on right now, whereas these assessments is compared to the date in which they took place, and it works out how much time we have left, how many levels of progress you're still expected to make with these students, and completes the tracking that way. The other buttons underneath this for Year 10 assessments and Year 11 assessments take you to an exact copy of that page, just with all of the relevant data for that specific year. So if you're in Year 9 and you click on the Year 10 assessments, there's not going to be much to see. But obviously if you click on Year 10 when you're in Year 10, it will draw all of the data that it needs for that particular year. So underneath that we have a button for NEA and mock exams. Clicking on that button has taken us to a very similar sheet, but here we have an assessment input for just the mocks and coursework. So this is designed for 2 mock papers and 1 element of coursework. Now this is completely separate to the rest of the information in the system. So you could, in theory, fill in this information and base all of your tracking purely on mocks and coursework. Now this may be useful if it's towards the end of Year 11 or if we have another experience such as COVID, but that's where you'd have to use your teacher judgment and decide whether or not to use just this or just the tracking we've just looked at, or a combination of the two. Another feature that this tool has is the tracking analysis. This tracking sheet shows us an overview of how things are going. Now this particular one I'm showing you as an example would be towards the end of Year 11, and as you can see at the top here, we've only got 24% of the course left to run. So this would be near the start or halfway through Year 11. The levels or grades of progress yet still to achieve is 0.48, so about half a grade of progress. So remember right at the beginning we said that these students were going to make 2 levels of progress between Year 9 and Year 11. Well, at this stage there'd be only half a grade left to make. And here we can see how many students are currently tracking under, approaching, on and over target, and how many students are completely failing. And then here we have a range of our actual levels 1 through 9 and see which students are hitting those kind of grades and percentages of those, and what the average kind of grade is, and then our working grade or working at level range. So we have students ranging from working towards to a level 6. Underneath that we have our tracking checker, so we can pick a particular student, let's say student 1, and it will show us the results they got in all of their assessments. So it's basically under, on and over where they should have been, but it gives you a rough flight path, a rough general idea of where they were. So you can see with this student at this point, which looks like it would be towards the end of Year 10, they really started to lose it in terms of their attainment. Now this particular cohort, you could say that was COVID, or you might have reasons for that, but just generally speaking it's an idea of how students have performed or attained over the course. Again, we have their name, class, target band, tracking, which can all be filtered, so you could pick a particular class for this if you need to enter this information onto your registration system such as SIMS. We have a calculated final estimate. This basically means, as it stands, what do you think this student is going to get in their final result? And that is linked here to their current working at grade. So the current working at grade is their average from the current year, and the calculated final estimate includes how much progress we still have left to make. So our 1.1 plus the 0.4 of a grade would take you up to our 1.5. So every student who is currently working at a 1.1 should have a calculated final estimate of a 1.5. Now, of course, some students will underachieve and some students will overachieve, and that should generally balance itself out, because on top of the interventions you're doing, you're providing the same level of education for each student. So they should all be making another 0.4 of a level of progress in the time we have left to run. And like we say, individual students are spiky in terms of profiles, so that may not be the case, but generally speaking there should be a correlation between your calculated final estimate and their working at. So again, this student here is currently working at 6.8. We think we're going to make another 0.4 of a level of progress, and that would take their final estimate, what they should end up with, as a 7.2, which is obviously a purple for this student because their target band is a 5 to a 7, and we're talking about the lower end. So a 7 is higher than the 5, therefore they're tracking purple. We've also got access to all of this information specifically for parents' evenings. To make things as easy and user-friendly as possible and as convenient as possible for staff, we've included this form for parents' evening, or however parents' evening may take place. So you can select your class. It can be multi-class, which would be all of the classes combined, or a particular class if there's only one teacher for it. And you'd write your name in there, Mr. Smith, for example, and select your slot duration. So at the moment we've got this set to 5-minute timings. Again, if we change that to a 10-minute slot, you'll see all of these timing slots down the side change. We've got the same tracking checker that we had on the tracking sheet, so we can look at student 1. So when we have that student in front of us or their parent on the phone, then we can talk through how their grades have been going. And if we go here and put in our student 1 for our first time slot, it'll bring up their target, their current tracking, and how many assessments they're actually missing. So again, we can put in a target here for student 2, 5 to 7, they're tracking on that, or over that even, and they're missing an assessment. And we should be able to see here, if we go to student 2, it's pretty obvious which assessment they are missing. Again, if we change this to class B, we actually don't have access to student 1 and 2 anymore because they're not in that class. And again, if we went to multi-class, you'll have access to all of the students. And the final time-saving tool here is the results analysis. The final useful tool within this utility is the results analysis. So this will do all the number crunching for you at the end of the course. So once you get your results back in summer, we just have to go back to here and start putting them in. So let's say this student number 1 ended up with their 2, and you can see they were on target. Now my prediction for them was actually a 1, so that's gone purple because they beat my prediction. And student 2, we can get to student 2, we can put in, I'm just going to make these results up obviously, but let's say we had a few students on a 1, a few on a 5, a few on a 6, a couple of 7s, and let's say a few of them actually got the result they were supposed to get, and a few of them got their predictions. So you can kind of see there how the tracking relates. So again, this student here got a 3. I thought they were going to get a 6. Their target was a 5, so both of those are red. And then the magic of this tool is that you can click on the detailed analysis button to provide all the information you need for your line management meetings. So on this slide, this is the detailed analysis for the results, and immediately at the top you can see any gaps you may have in your significant groups. So here we can see that with those results, the gender gap, males to females, is -1 grade. They're more able and talented, they did better, pupil premium did worse, and so on. And it shows you the kind of grade difference, which really should highlight any gaps you have with your significant groups. Next we have the averages, so the average grade for a male was a 5 and a female was a 4, and so on. We didn't have any looked after children in this particular group. Here we have some yellow cells, and remember the yellow cells are the ones you can actually adjust. So we could say, I'm interested to know how many 9s to 4s we had, and we had 31% 9 to 4. Or you might want to say, how many passes did we have? So we're going to go 9 to 1, and we ended up with 50% pass rate there, and that's because I didn't enter in all of the kind of fake grades that we were looking at. So you've got 4 slots to be able to do that. Then here you have your value added based on over and under targets. So basically, what was your score when you take into account how many students were over target, how many students were under target, to see how much value you added to their target grades. For this particular example, we had 22.9% over target, which is 11 students, 10% on target, 16% under target, and then again we've got our predictions here. So that's 37% was wrong, 21% actually performed better than the prediction, 4% were on the prediction, and 10% were under prediction. Now that's really important information because you can then use that for your next cohort to adjust the way in which you assess them. Maybe your assessments are too heavily weighted, or maybe you're a bit too stingy on the marking, or maybe you need to focus on a particular topic. Again, down here then we have our grade distribution, which kind of shows you roughly how the grades were presented. There's a lot of fails on here because I didn't enter in all of the information. And again here our target achievement, so we can see how many people, or how many students, sorry, were over, on, or under target. So then we have a box for each of our grades, we have our 9s, 8s and so on, shows the numbers that achieve them in the percentage, and then a breakdown of all our significant groups within those particular grades, and that goes all the way through to a fail. The key with any of these types of tools is that the more you use it, the better you get at it, and the more efficient it becomes, and also the more you get out of it. It is designed to save you time, effort and energy. A few clicks of a button and you don't have to do any of your own calculations. It will guide you through what levels you should be writing on students' work, and the tracking is there for you to input into any other system, whether that be Sims or any other kind of registration system, and the time it will save you with results analysis can be key. And if every department in the school adopts the same policy and uses this consistently, then all of the results analysis will be consistent and you'll be able to draw conclusions and compare departments much more efficiently. So hopefully you can see the benefit of this tool. Don't forget that you can set it up for any other type of course, so it can be for a 1-year BTEC, it could be for a 2-year A-level, or it could even just be for a 1-year Key Stage 3 cohort.